People rarely lose faith all at once. That's not how modern societies work. First, people continue normally. They wake up early, answer emails, sit through meetings pretending everyone still emotionally believes in what they're building. The structure continues, at least visibly. And visibility matters more than most people realize, because modern life is extremely good at looking stable. The lights still turn on. The trains still arrive. The headlines still speak with bullish confidence. Everything keeps moving, which is exactly why emotional dot becomes difficult to notice at first. Nothing appears broken. People simply start feeling different underneath the routine, quieter, more cautious, less emotionally certain than before. And most of the time, they never fully say it out loud. That's the strange thing about institutional belief. People rarely announce, "I no longer trust the structure." They adapt privately, emotionally, almost silently. Prestige survives longer than confidence. That may be one of the most important psychological dynamics of modern life, because power has never depended entirely on force. It depends partially on emotional continuity, on people continuing to assume the structure will remain stable tomorrow. That assumption alone organizes enormous amounts of human behavior. People sign contracts because they assume continuity, build careers because they assume continuity, raise families, take loans, delay rest, all partially supported by emotional trust in systems they cannot personally verify. And for long periods of time, that trust feels invisible until it weakens. Then suddenly you notice strange things. The way conversations change, the way humor changes, the way entire generations begin joking about instability with unsettling emotional calmness. That shift matters, because systems can survive criticism surprisingly well. What they struggle with more is emotional detachment. Once people stop feeling psychologically connected to institution, participation slowly becomes performative, and modern societies increasingly run on performed normalcy. People still show up, still comply, still function, but privately, many no longer feel emotionally connected to the certainty underneath those routines, and that creates a very specific atmosphere. Not collapse, not panic, something stranger. Ambiguity. A quiet sensation that something feels less stable than everyone publicly pretends. But nobody fully wants to acknowledge it, because acknowledgement itself feels destabilizing. So people continue. That's a paradox. Modern systems do not require passionate belief from everyone. They require continuity. People showing up tomorrow. That alone sustains enormous structures, even when emotional certainty quietly weakens underneath them. You can see this everywhere now, in careers, in institutions, in relationships, even socially. People increasingly maintain appearances while privately negotiating uncertainty underneath them. Not because they are dishonest, because social stability often depends on maintaining emotional continuity, even partial continuity, even exhausted continuity. That erosion rarely looks dramatic. It looks tired. People stop expecting major improvement, stop emotionally investing in permanence the same way previous generations once did. Not because they become irrational, because prolonged uncertainty changes emotional behavior. Humans tolerate hardship surprisingly well when it feels temporary. What slowly breaks people psychologically is persistent ambiguity, uncertainty that never fully resolves. Modern life has become extremely good at producing this feeling, not catastrophic instability, managed instability. Enough uncertainty to keep people adaptive, not enough collapse to interrupt continuity. And over time, people adapt emotionally to this atmosphere. You begin expecting instability before stability, preparing for disappointment before commitment, emotionally hedging against the future itself, not consciously. That nervous adaptation may define modern adulthood more than people realize, especially for men, because men are still psychologically expected to become stabilizing forces, reliable, grounded, certain. But modern systems increasingly produce emotionally unstable environments, while simultaneously expecting emotional stability from the people inside them. That contradiction quietly exhausts people, especially when public life continues pretending everything still feels normal. The branding remains confident. Institutions remain polished. Corporations still speak that language of certainty with almost theatrical commitment. Meanwhile, privately, many people increasingly experience something very different: fatigue, distance, quiet doubt, not open rebellion, emotional withdrawal. And emotional withdrawal is difficult to measure, because people continue participating while feeling it. That's the important part. Most systems do not collapse the moment people stop emotionally trusting them. People continue participating long after certainty weakens, long after belief becomes thinner, long after confidence quietly transforms into routine. That's why modern instability feels psychologically surreal. Nothing fully breaks, but fewer things feel emotionally convincing than before. People still pursue careers, while privately doubting long-term security. Still maintain relationships, while fearing instability underneath intimacy itself. Still participate socially, while emotionally exhausted by constant performance. Everything continues, but with less emotional certainty underneath it. And eventually, that changes entire societies. You feel it in conversations now. The future sounds different when people talk about it, more cautious, more ironic, more emotionally detached, as if permanence itself stopped feeling fully believable. Even successful people increasingly speak this way. That matters, because this is not only economic pressure, it is psychological adaptation to prolonged uncertainty. Modern life increasingly rewards emotional flexibility. Stay adaptable. Stay employable. Stay emotionally mobile. which sounds reasonable at first. Until you realize stability itself, it slowly becomes emotionally difficult to trust. And once enough people quietly stop emotionally believing in permanence, societies begin operating differently. Not externally at first, internally. People become more cautious, more isolated, more performative, less emotionally willing to build expansive futures around structures they no longer fully trust. That affects everything: relationships, communities, identity itself. Because human beings emotionally organize around expected futures, and when the future feels psychologically unstable, people stop building emotionally expansive lives. Not because they lost ambition, because uncertainty quietly compresses behavior, and modern systems often interpret that compression as stability. People still functioning, still adapting, still participating. The structure continues, which means from the outside, everything still appears manageable, even while emotional certainty quietly weakens underneath it. That is the paradox modern societies increasingly live inside. Prestige survives longer than confidence, and people continue performing normalcy, long after emotional certainty begins disappearing.